Welcome to Medicare School Daily, where we help you understand Medicare, save money, avoid mistakes, and above all else, get the most out of your Medicare benefits. I've been in the Medicare business a long time and have literally fielded tens of thousands of questions. And one of the most common questions we get asked is this one right here. Should you start Medicare A and B at age 65? Well, the answer really depends upon your situation. So you have to know the answer to this question. Are you or your spouse still working? And if you say to me that you are no longer working or your spouse is no longer working, which means you don't have a group plan available, the answer to the question, should you start Medicare at 65, is you must start at 65. You have no other options. Unless you or your spouse are working, you have to go on Medicare. Now, if you're receiving Social Security, they're going to mail you your Medicare card A and B automatically. It just shows up in the mail about 100 days prior to when your Medicare begins on your birth month. Okay, but if you're not on Social Security, then you're going to have to initiate that enrollment and go ahead and enroll yourself into Medicare. But let's say you answer yes to this. Maybe you're still working, or maybe your spouse is still working. And so you say yes to that question. And so the answer is, should you go on Medicare A and B? And the real answer is, well, maybe. Maybe, maybe not. In order for you to decide whether you're going to go on Medicare or should go on Medicare, there's some things that you have to look at. First of all, you're going to have to make a comparison between your group plan versus what your Medicare options are. In order for you to evaluate this decision, you have to know, first off, what's your premium? What's it costing you to be covered by the work plan? In other words, what is coming out of your check? I know your employer's paying for some of it, you're paying for some of it as well, but yours typically payroll deducted. So what's your premium on a monthly basis? What's your deductible? Some people have low deductibles, maybe $500 or $1,000. Some have very high deductibles, maybe $5,000 or $10,000. So you have to meet a deductible before the plan begins to pay. So how high is that? And then lastly, max out of pocket for the year. That means that if you got something some serious diagnosis, you got cancer, maybe hip replacement or something like that, you had to have open heart surgery. Those are very expensive needs. And so what would be the most you would spend for the year? $2,000, $5,000, $10,000, it varies plan to plan, but you have to know what your max out of pocket is going to be if something seriously happened. And so these are the details that we need to know for you to be able to evaluate that particular decision. Now, there's two things that you need to know about your premium if you're married to someone that's also Medicare eligible. You want to know what's the premium if you did employee only or if you did employee plus spouse, right? And so you need to find that out for premium. In fact, we just had this happen recently. Had a lady, husband and wife, both turning 65, going on Medicare. The employee-only price for her was $100 a month. But to add her husband was $550 a month. And so it cost her $450 to cover her spouse who is also Medicare eligible. So what she decided to do very wisely is she took the employee-only plan, paid $100 a month, and put her husband on Medicare. All right, so those details need to go into this decision. And then there's a couple of other items that you need to consider. Number 3 here, we have one rule of thumb that we would suggest you be mindful of, and that's this. If you are spending out of your pocket for premium $250 a month or more, $250 up, then it's probably in your best interest to go on Medicare because you're just paying too much for the group plan. Again, I said probably, but that's kind of our rule of thumb. If someone says to us, you know, I'm only paying $50 or $100 a month and it's a pretty good plan, then probably going to stay right where you are on the group plan. But if you're spending $250 a month more, either for you or your spouse or both, then probably going to be in your best interest to look at Medicare as an option. All right, and then fourthly here and lastly, we have two very important cautions. If your group plan has coverage for your spouse, right, that is younger, and your younger spouse is no longer working, is covered by that plan, and really has no other options, then you going to Medicare is probably going to affect them adversely. Or if you have children, remember, children can be covered up until age 26. So you have children that are below the age of 26, then it also may impact them negatively by you going on Medicare because they're going to lose their coverage as well. So those are the cautions. And then lastly is this. If you are taking expensive medications, that could be, let's suppose you're an insulin-dependent diabetic and you're taking Novolog or Humalog or Lantus and you're using the quick pins, those are very expensive. And so you want to compare what your copays are on the group plan versus what your copays would be with Medicare. Because sometimes Medicare costs for those kind of medications are more expensive. So that's going to hurt you financially by getting off the group plan. Again, not always, but sometimes. But expensive medications can also cause you to stay on that particular group plan. So these are the things that you're going to need to consider before you can answer this question: should you start Medicare A and B at 65? For some of you, that's a good move. Others of you need to stay right where you are on the group plan. Thanks for watching. To learn more, watch the related video or check out our most recent video. Also, be sure you click to subscribe for free and get notified every time we post a new video. To watch our complete Medicare workshop, go to MedicareSchool.com. And finally, when you're ready to compare all your insurance options and get free enrollment help from one of our Medicare School guides, call the number on the screen. See you next time.